All right, so we are all impacted by the fuel prices we were talking about earlier. What about electricity prices? Something South Africans care deeply about. Well, Eskom has now explained why it's seeking a tariff increase from the energy regulator Nersa in a workshop it held in Sunninghill in Johannesburg today. It says if it does not increase tariffs, it may be forced to borrow externally. Nersa has opened the consultation process for Eskom's application for average tariff increases of 19.9%, so nearly 20%. If approved, the increase will apply to Eskom's direct customers from April 1st next year. The power utility wants municipal customers to pay an average of 27.5% more from July the 1st next year. Okay, so increases between 20 and 27%. For more, I'm joined in studio by our economics reporter, Liabo Setho. Liabo, okay, so people will act with alarm. Eskom is trying to explain why it needs 20%.
I can understand why they would be so alarmed. It's really, really shocking. But they've come up to try and explain to us, Francis, why it's so necessary for them to request this 20% and 27.5% from the municipalities. So basically they're saying that, one, we all are aware that Eskom is in financial trouble. And they've given us a historical background of there was a time where it was not charging for electricity at all, or it was charging very low for electricity and not recouping enough. And these are one of the reasons, or two of the reasons, that have helped it, or rather put them in this kind of position that they find themselves in. So as you may already remember, is that currently we are operating with a 2.2% increase that they were granted by Nersa, which effectively you could say that in real terms is a decrease on their part, because they didn't get much. So what they're looking for now is 20%. Why do they want this 20%? They're saying, look, we still have costs that we have to cover of our own. But the consequences of not getting the 20% are much, much more expensive. They cite the fact that they may need to go borrow externally. You remember that because the country is downgraded, SOEs like Eskom as well are also downgraded, is also operating in a sort of a rating downgrade. So it means it will be much more expensive for them to go out in the market and borrow. And if they don't do that, that means that the economy will be impacted, because now the fiscus will be put under pressure. So just that one reason alone, Francis, gives you the idea of why it's important for Nersa when it makes its decision to balance. It says we either have to borrow, or we have to increase things like the value-added tax. We have to probably go into the personal income tax or even company tax. We have to get the money from somewhere.
So somehow South Africans will pay.
They will have to pay. But of course, the decision is not made by themselves or myself or you. It's made by the national energy regulator known as Nersa. Currently, they are doing road shows. They're expecting to be making a decision by December about whether they'll be granting Eskom this 20% that they're requesting.
Do we know now if Nersa is going to go from 2.2% times 10 to anywhere near 20%, or are they holding their cards close?
Well, we don't know now, but we must remember that it also has to balance what the financial sustainability of the power utility and also the sustainability of the consumer. So they cannot punish Eskom, and at the same time they cannot punish us a lot. So they have to
they're between a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely, they have to find the right balance. So I don't envy them right now, but this 20%, Francis, has to come from somewhere.
Eskom has been saying for years, I looked once at their debt accumulation, and it's very big. So they are paying huge amounts of interest already. That's why they don't want to borrow. And they were tasked with not only administering our infrastructure, but building ahead, because we know after the blackouts we didn't have enough. Were they talking about where those infrastructure developmental plans even are? So some people would like them not to have to worry about that, maybe move that off the balance sheet.
Well, as far as I know, a lot of infrastructure build is almost complete and others are already running. Here we're talking about Ingula, Kusile, and other power stations. And a lot of debt, as you said, was accrued just to build those, so that we have a lot of electricity to play around with. Most of those are already yielding the results. Most of those, they are behind schedule, unfortunately. Most of those are behind schedule. They have cost the taxpayer a lot of money, but they seem to be on track as we speak now because they're already feeding electricity into the electricity grid.
All right, so let's see what Nersa eventually decides. Thank you for that explanation, Liabo Setho from our economics team.